It's time for Security Now. Steve Gibson is here with some fun pictures of the week, an example of how not to graph. Once again, news that makes me wonder why anybody's still using Windows. And he's going to explain why Apple suddenly and unilaterally announced they're not going to accept certificates with a longer date than 1 year in Safari. Details why it's happening and why it didn't have to, coming up next on Security Now. Security Now comes to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. Securing every access point in your company doesn't have to be a challenge. LastPass unifies access and authentication to make securing your employees simple and secure. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 755, recorded Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, Apple's Cert surprise. Security Now is brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and faster than the competition with no fees for egress or API requests and no complex storage tiers. Your business may be unpredictable, but your data costs shouldn't be. Start a free trial at wasabi.com and use the offer code SecurityNow. And by PlexTrack. PlexTrack has finally solved the pain of security assessment reporting. Try PlexTrack free for 1 month on premises or in the cloud with no contracts and no risks. Go to plextrack.com/twit to claim your free month today. And by Privacy.com. Privacy lets you make purchases online using virtual cards instead of real ones, protecting your identity and bank information on the internet. New customers get $5 to spend on your first purchase. Go to privacy.com/securitynow to sign up today. It's time for Security Now, the show where we cover your security and privacy and all that jazz, and sometimes how things work with Steve Gibson, our man about town, a man about the security certificate. He is the guy in charge at the GRC, the Gibson Research Corporation, at grc.com. And, man, a beloved character around here because he keeps us up to date on what's going on in security. Hi, Steve.
Yo, Leo. Great to be with you again for this last podcast of February. Where has a month gone?
Well, it is the shortest month, after all.
Oh, actually, I'm just looking on my little calendar. It says the 29th.
Yes,
so
it's
this
leap
is
year. Happy leap year.
Yeah, 366 days this year, which sort of ties in an odd way to the topic of this podcast. I named it Apple's Cert surprise because last week at the CAB forum, the CA browser forum, thus CAB, Certificate Authority Browser Certificate Authority / browser forum, where browser makers and the certificate authorities meet regularly in order to talk about the world and how things are going and what things need to change and so forth. Apple did something that I have to wonder how truly unexpected it was. But because I imagine there were some people who were not as surprised as others, but I'll save that for the end of the show. But anyway, it bears on the number of days in the year because of the expiration of certificates, which is based on how many days in the future from the date of issuance the certificate self-expires. And, of course, our listeners know that certificate expiration and revocation and all that is like one of this podcast's favorite hobby horses because, well, it's just so badly broken. But we have a lot of news to catch up on. We're going to re-examine the Windows 10 lost profiles problem. It turns out there's news there. And also a consequence of the need to roll back, or maybe to avoid in the first place, this month's Patch Tuesday's disaster. There are some consequences of that need to be handled. We look at a new feature which is slated to arrive in the next Windows 10 feature release, which is unfortunately named the 2004 release, which, okay, Microsoft, come on. Then we also examined the details of a new attack on the 4G LTE and 5G cellular technologies, which is worrisome. We've got the full default rollout of Firefox's support for DOH, and also the availability of a powerful new sandboxing technology arriving from Firefox. We also check in with Chrome's fix earlier just this morning of a 0-day that was found being exploited in the wild, only the third of those to happen for Chrome in the last 12 months. And finally, before turning our attention to the bomb that Apple dropped in the lap of the entire certificate industry last week, I'm going to update our listeners about the things I've learned after returning to work on SpinRight's next iteration. So I think we have another interesting podcast full of fun stuff. And we have for the picture of the week, this is completely off topic, but I labeled this our cranky old guy pictures of the week, because I saw something on Sunday that just so annoys me. I stopped it and backed it up and pointed it out to Lori and said, "Look at this! Look how wrong this is!
This is wrong."
So I thought, okay, I got to share this with our listeners. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, a word from our sponsor this week, Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. I know it's lunchtime when you're listening, you're thinking Wasabi, oh, that green ball that comes with your sushi. Yeah, that's hot, but not as hot as cloud storage these days. Everybody's moving to the cloud. Wasabi's a great choice for anybody moving to the cloud. I especially want to talk to you managed service providers, because it's a great service for you to offer your clients. You'll earn more and charge less. I love that. Wasabi saves so much. It's 80% less expensive than Amazon S3. It's significantly less expensive than on-prem storage. This is part of the thing you need to convince your clients of, that on-prem storage may not be the best deal nor the best idea. Typically, you can store data in Wasabi's cloud for less than just the maintenance fees on on-prem storage, let alone the storage costs. People sometimes say, well, on-prem's more secure, right? No, not unless you're a security guru. I think on-prem has all sorts of problems. Let me give you a couple of ways Wasabi is better than on-prem. As far as durability, 11 nines of durability. That, if you do the math, is one file every 649,000 years. Even with that kind of durability, they still do active integrity checking. Every object stored on your Wasabi cloud is checked for integrity every 90 days. And because Wasabi is hosted in redundant premier Tier 4 data centers, highly secure, fully redundant, if any integrity check comes back with this file's been changed, they've got copies elsewhere they can replace it with. So right there, your data is intact and the integrity is assured. It's secure by default, right? I mean, you're in these Tier 4 data centers. They're highly secure. All your data in Wasabi is always encrypted at rest. Even if you don't say turn on encryption, it's a given. Of course, in transit as well. They follow best security models, best practices. They have things like access control mechanisms, like bucket policies, ACLs, to give you control over who can see what. I think one of my favorite features, and this is really important in the time of ransomware, and honestly, if you're an MSP and you're not talking to your clients about ransomware mitigation, why not? Here's one bit of the story you can tell them. With Wasabi, you can designate some or all of your data immutable. It cannot be changed. That means even if ransomware tears through your network, gets every on-prem drive, every computer in your company, the Wasabi copy is immutable. It cannot be harmed. See, that's why it's better than on-prem. And actually, as bad as ransomware is, human error is probably a bigger threat. All of that's protected. It's completely compliant with every standard, HIPAA compliant, FINRA compliant, CJIS compliant. So let me recap. 80% cheaper. It supports the S3 API. They don't charge for API calls. They do not charge for egress. Amazon does. Nope. one flat rate, so you know exactly what you're going to pay. It's faster, too, because they have this unique way of writing on the disk that is direct writing instead of sector by sector. That means that they're up to 6 times faster, 600% faster than S3. So I hope I've convinced you a little bit. Just think about what you'd be saving. Talk to your boss about the benefit if they're moving to the cloud, or your customer. If they're moving to the cloud, you got to show them Wasabi. Wasabi.com. I know you want to know more. Go to wasabi.com. Click the free trial link. Use the offer code SECURITYNOW for an unlimited month, as much data as you want. Fill it up. Just jam stuff in there. Really get a sense of the speed, the value that Wasabi offers. I wish more people knew about Wasabi. We're really trying to spread the word. Migrate your data to the cloud with confidence. Move your customers to the cloud. Wasabi.com. And don't forget the offer code SECURITYNOW. That lets them know you saw it here. That's also important to us. We love you, Wasabi. Keep up the good work, and everybody ought to give this a try. More and more people in the chat room and on Twitter, I'm seeing more and more people talk about Wasabi. I think it's finally getting some traction, which is really great news. It's a great product. All right, we're ready for the pictures.
So, anyway, this is just you and I have talked about in the past that one of my pet peeves is a chart where the y-axis, the vertical, is I guess it's deliberately deceptive. Typically, they're trying to show how great some change was over time. And you look at it, and you know at this line going across, and you think, "Oh my God!" And then you look down, and you realize that the axis has been labeled so that it doesn't start at 0, so that you're seeing an actual percentage of change over time. Instead, the minimum of the y-axis is just a little bit lower than the maximum, which has the effect of ridiculously inflating the size of the change. Well, in a related peeve, I was watching Meet the Press on NBC on Sunday, and they were showing what was trying to be a pie chart of an entrance poll from the Democratic Nevada caucus the previous day. And what just stopped me cold was that the first of these pictures that I show that Sanders and Biden both have the same percentage of in this entrance poll.
Oh, really?
They're both they're both 24%. And you look at this chart, and so it's what the problem is. It's technically a pie chart, but now I guess it's more fancy to do it as a donut where you remove the center, right? So, but the whole point is that our eyes are very good at discerning angle. This is actually one of the reasons that the speedometers use an angular needle, and even in high performance, high end attack, military aircraft, they still have dials. They have pointers, because we're able to instantly understand an angle, whereas otherwise we'd have to be like reading digits and thinking about it. Well, so the beauty of a pie chart is that it's all about angles. But in this case, and we see it all the time, in their interest to make it look fancy and modern, they make it 3D, and then they drop it back. They tilt it backwards so that it looks more 3D-ish and fancy. And of course, it has the effect of, because of perspective, of dramatically increasing the foreground versus the background.
It's kind of like a Mercator projection or something. It's, we all have this.
That's a very good analogy. Yes.
It's the opposite problem, which is taking a 3D space and making it 2D misrepresents the size of the continents and the countries. In this case, taking a 2D space and making it 3D misrepresents it. So, conspiracy theorists are going to say, well, mainstream media doesn't like Bernie anyway, so they're definitely trying to make Bernie look smaller than Joe. It is true. They could have put Biden in the back and Bernie in the front.
Well, for what it's worth, I was going to say it's not even alphabetical, but for those who are not able to see this, the first chart shows Sanders and Biden. The numerical percentage is 24 each.
Yeah.
The Biden slice of the pie looks dramatically larger than Sanders. And so I first stopped that and I go, oh my God. And I backed it up and, did and subjected Lori to the same tirade. And then a few minutes later, we get the second one, which is also a disaster here. Because of this distortion, we've got another Sanders-Biden comparison. In this instance, their size looks sort of comparable. It looks like, okay, that's kind of about the same. But in fact, Sanders is at 27 and Biden is at 39.
The numbers are not at all comparable.
Not at all comparable. Yet, if you just sort of look at these amount of the color.
The blue should be almost 50% bigger than the purple.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No.
Anyway, so don't believe these charts. Look at the numbers. Make your own charts, kids.
Yeah. Or, again, it's just, if it was just a straight on pie chart, we would instantly have a deep intuitive sense for the relative size of these things. And that's the whole point of having an angular pie chart. It's to show you relative sizes, but it's completely destroyed when you throw it into 3D and then get like perspective distortion in order to make it look really fancy. So bad, NBC.
Bad. Fake news.
And speaking of bad, so remember how last week we said that even though after installing the February, this is the infamous now KB 4532693 update rollup, some users discovered that all their stuff was gone and their desktop, all the icons disappeared from their desktop. They went to My Documents, and there was no documents there under My Documents. Everything was gone. And we know that this is the per user profile information, which is when you log on to Windows as a user, that's what Windows makes current. So you're seeing under the user's directory off of the root of your boot drive is, your various usernames who share the computer. You log in as a user, you get your stuff. Somebody else logs in, they get their stuff. Unfortunately, you run the February update rollup, and in some cases, you get no stuff. Well, the good news we believed was that nothing was actually deleted, but rather the user who did the update had their profile temporarily renamed as with a .000 or a .back, which meant that the stuff wasn't gone. It could be recovered. Some advice was you could uninstall this. Oddly enough, apparently, if you just restarted Windows 4 to 6 times, and I can't believe I'm saying this because it just seems so broken. But yes, children, you just restart Windows, just keep at it up to 6 times, and maybe all your stuff will come back because something in Windows will wake up and go, oh, whoops, and then bring it back. Turns out that's not true for all people. What is beginning to surface, and there are enough people who seem authoritative enough, not just confused newbies, but people who appear to know what they're doing, reporting that in some instances they have actually permanently lost everything. That is, Windows did rename their profile into oblivion. There's a posting on the Answers forum at Microsoft.com that reads, I was on the phone with Microsoft for 4 hours. Surface Pro 7, about 2 months old. There's no user data, no temporary account, no restore points. Uninstalling the update didn't work because my user data is gone. Microsoft is calling in the morning because they think my personal services are free. So this guy's a little peeved, obviously. I know the only option is to flatten the surface and start over, like Groundhog Day, the movie. I have 2 desktops upgraded from Windows 7 that survived, if that helps. Somebody else also posting in the forum. This update, KB4532693, caused all the data on my laptop to be erased. Even after uninstalling the update, the laptop would not successfully boot. Then resetting the laptop to factory settings while choosing to keep all personal data erased everything. Everything, he repeats in all caps. And there are major news reporting groups like Bleeping Computer that have followed all these threads down, and they're confirming that as far as they know, this is true. Bleeping Computer's article has the headline, Windows 10 KB4532693 update bug reportedly deletes user files. And again, we're not really getting anything from Microsoft. And at this point, it would be helpful if Microsoft would say something about this, because this becomes a problem. As we know, it's really the case nowadays that our backups need to have backups. And after I had a few close calls with old and spontaneously dying machines, remember that my beloved Windows XP machine died, just completely died, and all of my stuff was on a hardware RAID with multiple drives. It was all there still, and I got it all back, and everything was fine. But still, it was like, yikes! It was a wake up call for me. So now I am backed up every which way, and in fact, I'm seriously considering moving my entire Windows user profile now to sync.com rather than just selected working directory hierarchies, which is what I've done. I just continue to be so pleased with the way sync.com is working. And that way, all of my user profile stuff would be synced and version managed across multiple machines and so forth. I firmly practice safe computing. I'm careful about where I go. I don't venture very far away from, places on the internet that seem really safe. And I'm very careful when I'm like needing to go download something. I spend some time checking it out. I'm sure that our listeners do too. So I hope that the danger from anything malicious successfully attacking me is minimal. But it's disturbing to imagine that running a Windows update could be the Trojan horse that I willingly allow to enter through my front gate, and that it would do some damage. I've not lost anything, and we know that the majority of people aren't. So what's unknown is, what exactly is going on? As long as, if it's the case that people are actually having all their stuff deleted by a Windows update, then that suggests that we really do need some to perform. I'm thinking that I will do a full image of my system before I do an update, and that I will take control of that process rather than just let Windows do it whenever it wants to. So wow, it's disturbing that this could be the case. And at this point, if Microsoft would say, we know what's happening, we found out and figured it out, then that would be helpful. And Leo, I'm unable to listen to all of Windows Weekly as often as I would wish to, but I did encounter, while I was digging into all this, I encountered something that I remembered you guys talking about, I think, which was that Microsoft let go a huge percentage of their Q&A staff, and that now the developers are doing the testing of things that used to be a whole separate group. Is that the case? I think I remembered hearing that in the along the way. So anyway, let's just hope that this gets resolved. And it would be nice if we heard from Microsoft, like some actual resolution to this issue. Okay, so also, remember the serious zero-day exploit that we learned about, which involved IE and its invocation of this older jscript.dll. We know that this vulnerability has been exploited in the wild in limited targeted attacks. The bad guys are able to leverage it to silently execute arbitrary commands on an unpatched system when the user visits a specially crafted website. And then we subsequently learned that there are many other ways to get IE to invoke that old retired jscript.dll, which is no longer the one that anyone's using, but it's still around because it turns out it's important to have it. The issue is so severe that Microsoft was prompted to suggest a short-term fix until the February patch update became available, which would fix it for real. That flaw is being tracked as CVE 2020-0674, and the temporary fix was to remove all access to that DLL by deleting all security permissions from the file. So then nothing, whether good or bad, could cause it to be invoked. It would just be off limits in the file system. But as we know, many people soon discovered that their Windows Media Player, that was the thing that I think most people, and it's what I heard about most, would no longer work. But then other things were broken too, sort of some obscure things like HP printing and other USB printers would no longer function after that DLL was taken out of service. So the solution, we believed, was going to be Patch Tuesday's rollup, which would fix this for real. But of course, now we know that some people have had to back out of that. I would imagine that enterprises would be terrified to apply this Tuesday rollup to their systems without extensive testing. So this, of course, leaves us vulnerable to a targeted attack, which is probably going to be more prevalent now than it was, because before the bad guys who were using it knew that it had been discovered, they were trying to keep it secret. As soon as it becomes clear that this is the window of opportunity of exploitation is going to close, then they can afford to be much less cautious and do as much damage as they can before this problem gets resolved. Well, the problem is that its resolution was Patch Tuesday, which we no longer really have for many people who have had to back out of it or are, you could argue, wisely deferring its installation. Maybe just skip it completely and hope that March turns out to have a better outcome.
Or use Linux.
Exactly. In fact, there were actually, I chose not to share them on the podcast because in some cases I could not repeat the language that was being used. But I mean, there were many people who were so infuriated like people who clearly knew what they were doing, who were long-term Windows users who were, well, anyway, the point is they were swearing off of Windows. They said, that's it. I'm not putting up with this C word or S word any longer. That's it. It's a
fairly serious flaw in an operating system to seem like they lost your stuff. I mean, that's not insignificant.
Well, and the point was that on to some people, Leo, and apparently Microsoft in interactions on the phone has had to admit that it does look like it actually is all gone. That's what Bleeping Computer is now reporting.
then that's it. I would not. You're right. I wouldn't use Windows ever again.
Yes.
You lose my data, you lost my business. That's ridiculous.
Yes. At this point, and so that's what's happening. Yes, is that some users who apparently know what they're talking about and have spent hours on the phone with Microsoft have confirmed their stuff is actually gone.
Wow.
It wasn't just deleted. It was renamed into oblivion, and it was lost.
Oh, that's so not good.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the case of this 0-day exploit, which we were hoping February's patch updates would fix, because we don't have those, the guys at zeropatch.com, remember numeric0patch.com, they do these micropatches. So I just wanted to let our listeners know that they have added support for 1903 and 1909 to the support for the fix for this jscript.dll. It is zeropatch.com. I've got the link in the show notes for anyone who wants it, but I'm sure you can find it at zeropatch, numeric0patch.com. It wasn't initially working for the most recent 2 updates to Windows 10, the major feature updates. 1903 and 1909 weren't supported. It was only 7. It was Windows 7, Windows 10, 1709, 1803, and 1809. Now these latest 2 have been added because users may be relying upon it until if they don't feel comfortable installing this February patch, the Patch Tuesday update. So anyway, that now exists.
And you trust these guys for their little. I mean, we talked about this before. I just want to reiterate.
Yeah, I mean, their hearts seem to be in the right place. It's free for non-commercial use. Commercial users are asked to pay $25 per agent per year, and there is an enterprise plan. Yeah, I mean, I see no reason not to trust them. They're often you don't have to reboot your system. They're like little 25-byte patches that just go in and fix this one problem until Microsoft comes along with an updated DLL that then fixes it for sure. But so here's the problem. We have this 0-day we know is being actively exploited in the wild. Yes, it has been targeted, but it's now known to have a limited shelf life because Windows is onto them and Microsoft is onto them. Windows is going to get patched. It was supposed to be fixed in February. So for most of it's fixed. And I'm now like I'm glad I didn't lose all my stuff when I did the February update. I'm going to be doing I've got good imaging tools all over the place. I'm going to do an image of my system from now on before I do a patch Tuesday update.
Guess that's sensible, but what a pain.
I know. Isn't that wrong? It's just
crazy.
And what's worst is that Microsoft isn't saying we know what happened and we have the fix for it. And Leo, I think it was on Windows Weekly that you and Mary Jo and Paul were talking about how Microsoft had changed the way they're vetting these things. I think what I read while I was doing this research, and I think I recalled you guys talking about it, was Microsoft laid off a huge percentage of its Q&A staff, and the vetting of these things was now going to be done by the developer group at Microsoft.
Yep, that was a while ago. And boy, are they getting bit by that, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many times have we talked about the fact that developers are unable to test their own stuff? We can't test our own stuff. It's why I have this fabulous community in GRC's news groups specifically to help me find my problems. Yeah. Because, you just can't find them yourself. You have to have other people who have different systems. I dug into this a little bit because I was interested in how this was happening, because this is now a monthly problem for Windows 10. We're seeing now a run of problems with Windows 10 updates where they just seem unable to get it right. And apparently they're also relying on their insider community, who are not their developers, but they are users. But insiders are typically testing on VMs, and so they're not testing on like mature everyday use systems. And the problem is Microsoft is not saying, we found the problem and fixed it, so we're re-releasing this, no one need worry about it. Instead, there are hundreds of posts now of people who understand the temporary rename problem, and that's not what they have. They have permanent deletion.
That's unacceptable.
That's all of their data.
You can't get worse than that. That's terrible. Oh my God, that's awful.
I know. Yeah. So it's yeah. And imagine an enterprise environment. Again, until we know, it's one thing to say, we figured it out. It turns out it's like there was that problem, that interaction with Adobe Creative Cloud stuff. It was the Adobe Creative Cloud services, blah, blah, blah. Great. Now we know. But this is just now like it as you said. I mean, you obviously you understand. Obviously, who wouldn't? If if a Windows update deletes all of your stuff,
it can't get any worse.
And most users no longer have a choice about whether to install the update or not. Right? I mean, Microsoft has also said, we'll let you put it off. Yeah, we'll let you put it off, but for a few weeks. But then we're going to force you to take it. And what if it forces you to lose all your data? Oh,
wow. Yeah, I think you have a court case.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay, so here's one I don't get. We've got the next major feature release for Windows 10 is the ill-named 2004 release.
I'm sorry, Paul. I mean, Steve, that's 2004. 2004.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. 2004.
Yeah, it is a little confusing because it kind of looks like 2004, which seems like a pretty old update, but okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's if it's 1903, then you know that doesn't refer to probably a year when you've been alive. So that's not confusing.
We're everybody in Windows Weekly. We're just like everybody thought, why don't they just call it 20H1, first half of 20, and then the second one 20H2. That was their internal code name. But no, they really want a 2004. And they, by the way, it's not like it's that meaningful because they never make the date that they say. It's not going to be April. It's going to be whenever, probably May or who knows, March.
As long as they get it right. Please.
Yeah,
Microsoft,
right. No hurry.
Your time.
Yeah, no hurry.
Not on my account.
Nobody's asking for these. Nobody is asking for these, by the way.
I know. And here's another reason. They're now allowing optional device driver updates.
Oh, God, I hate Windows.
Starting now, as in like
what does
today,
that even mean?
I know. Get this, Leo. Device driver providers will be able to mark their device driver updates as automatic or manual. Any device driver update marked automatic will be included in the Windows automatic update package, like it is now. But any device driver updates marked manual will first appear in the new optional updates section to be added to Windows 10. Now, okay.
Why? See, my problem is, look, if you're a business with an IT department, good, they'll handle this. But why? And home users, stop buying Windows. Stop your friends, stop your relatives. I talk to way too many very nice people on the radio show who should never have run Windows. The word must go forth from this day to the future. Stop buying Windows for home use.
And, okay, so think about it. All of us who have used previous versions of Windows, like Windows 7, there is this odd, there's these two tabs, right? There's important updates and optional updates. And so you look at it and you go, well, they're updates. Do I need them? And when you look at the optional ones, they're like security things. It's like Windows security patch, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, well, that sounds like a good thing. So, I mean, think about it, Leo. How can it be optional? I mean, like, what is it that and so it seemed to me to be a step forward that with Windows 10, it was we're gonna get a roll up and we just do it once a month and it's gonna be better. But they couldn't live with that. They couldn't stay with that. So they, like, for whatever reason, decided to peel off, and now they're going to expose to the user this new, starting with the Windows 10 2004, which is beginning to seem more like 2004, 16 years ago, this new optional update where the user can select which they want. But, okay, what should they do? I just don't get it. Microsoft explains that this change will allow hardware developers to roll out new drivers and test them for reliability. Okay, shouldn't they have done that first? Against a smaller group of Windows users before pushing them out to a wider audience.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Okay. Then they said Microsoft believes these changes will help their customers to, quote, get the highest quality and most reliable drivers faster and with less friction. Okay. They're not going to backport this change to the earlier versions of Windows 10. So anybody with earlier version of Windows 10, you go to the driver manager app and then click on drivers and then go into the properties and go to update and see if there's an update for that hardware, for the driver for that hardware. What? Like, who does that? It is just well, yes, Leo, I think you clearly articulated the proper philosophy,
Normal
which is
Chromebook.
Chromebook.
Yeah. And if you need a real operating system, Linux is very stable, reliable, easy to use, and has to date, in my 30 years of using it, never deleted my home directory ever. Holy cow. Oh, jeez Louise. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
What a
Bleeping
world.
Computer reported that users were reporting
That's terrifying.
permanent deletion of all their data.
Yeah. That's up to. I kind of understand the optional updates because they're basically giving the hardware manufacturer more control over whether you get updated. But there seems like there'd be other ways to do that than this complicated end user, dance.
But I guess I don't understand. It's either unnecessary or necessary.
Well, because
How
they
is
want to
it-
be able to offer optional updates to beta versions of to test it. They don't want to push. I don't know. You're right. This doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
And now they're gonna give that to the end user.
Yeah, no,
you're gonna start getting calls.
I know. Is it optional? Should I do it? Yeah.
The tech guy. Yeah. This says optional updates. Well,
is it?
how optional are they? Are they really optional or not really optional? Because I'm not in a hurry today, and so I've got some extra time. So, and are they going to pile up? Are they just going to keep accumulating?
Well, that's a good question.
Do they go away?
Yeah. Do you get another one, optional one, or when does it become non-optional? At what point does that happen?
Right.
I don't know.
It's like user choice that users should not have to choose.
Right. It's just more BS.
And on that note,
Take a break? Oh, sure. Make me suffer now. You can just laugh have your little coffee. All right. Actually, this is kind of timely because it's about cybersecurity. If you are on a blue team at your company, or you do red teaming at your company, or a pen test or something like that, you know that one of the big headaches is the reporting between the red and the blue teams. PlexTrack to the rescue. PlexTrack's founder, Dan Close, is a 15-year veteran of cybersecurity. He knew intimately the hazards, the difficulties, just the annoyance of red team reporting. So PlexTrack, brand new venture-backed company, they're a dozen people. They have Fortune 500 companies as clients because they solve a big issue. PlexTrack becomes the force multiplier, creating for want of a better word, a purple teaming platform. Rapid reporting for red teams and tracking and attestation for blue teams. And no longer do your teams have to rifle through 500-page PDFs to figure out what the problems are and how do you mitigate. PlexTrack has a solution. They shift the paradigm from document-based reporting to web-based reporting. And I know you're going to say, well, I don't want this stuff on the web. Well, you can do it on-prem. They provide a solution to enable the purple teaming process. So here's what happens. PlexTrack generates reports, creating collaborations between red and blue teams through a central interface. Red teams, you can report issues. Blue teams, you remediate those issues. And when you have a single platform both teams are working with, there's nothing that falls through the cracks. Everybody knows what's going on. PlexTrack's custom templating and write-ups repository ensure consistency in the reporting. You can have your report in a browser. You can export it to Word or PDF. I wouldn't. I would keep it in the browser, but you can if you want. They also streamline the process of identifying, tracking, and resolving findings for blue teams. They could take multiple security issues, put them into a cohesive, dynamic report that makes it easy to remediate. That's huge, because problems that aren't easy to remediate sometimes don't get remediated. Analytics tell the story of security posture to the C-suite, so you don't even have to report to them. They see the single-page analytics. They go, good. It's taken care of, and it's easy to deploy. Almost everybody can deploy PlexTrack in 10 minutes. It is a purple teaming platform way beyond Word or PDF reports. They improve the entire security engagement lifecycle, making it easy to generate security reports, deliver them securely, track the issues to completion, and you do it from straight within the platform. Now, you don't have to have it on the cloud. You can use the PlexTrack cloud, but there's an on-prem version as well, so you can host it on your intranet or whatever works best for you. You put it on your S3, whatever it is, on your EC2, whatever it is you want. As a Security Now listener, you can try it free for 1 month. In the cloud, on-prem, doesn't matter. You can try it free for a month. You don't have to use the cloud version. I know sometimes people say, I don't want that stuff out there. I want it all inside. That's fine. Use the on-prem version. There's no contract. There's no risk. You just go to plextrack.com/twit. Say, I want to try it for a month. That's it. You'll claim it. You can do it. I think this makes it as easy as possible. And I tell you what, you show your red team, you show your blue team, you show your C-suite, everyone's going to buy into this because it's such a good idea. It just takes so many headaches out of the mix. PlexTrack, plextrac.com/twit. If you are doing this, you need you want a purple solution. I had to ask him when I talked to the PlexTrack, because I'm not all up on this stuff. I'm sure you, Steve, you know what I'm talking about here. I said, is that a common naming convention? They call them purple? Yeah. If you got red and blue, what do you get? Purple. Sure. PlexTrack.com/twit for a free 1-month trial. No hooks, no catches. I think you'll be very interested. All right, Steve, on we go.
So we got problems.
You mean we didn't before?
We got your problems right here. The guys that have been poking at cellular phone security for years are today, the 25th of February, 2020, during the NDSS, which is the Network Distributed System Security Symposium, which I guess should really be NDSSS, but perhaps they thought that was one S too many. That's being held in San Diego right now. they're delivering their paper disclosing their new attack on 4G LTE, and unfortunately, it also works against 5G because we haven't actually solved the problems. Okay, so there is in our cellular system the same sort of hierarchy of levels forming a network stack as we're used to having, for example, in our computers with TCP, physical layer, transport layer, the various protocol layers and so forth. So even their abstract of their paper was just it required too much understanding. I read it and I thought, okay, well, I could tackle explaining this, but I don't think we have enough time. But the introduction gives us a good sense for the importance of what they have found. So in the intro to their paper, they explain long-term evolution, which is, of course, what the acronym LTE, or the abbreviation LTE stands for, is the latest widely deployed mobile communication standard and is used by hundreds of millions of people worldwide. The protocol offers high-speed internet access and packet-based telephony services and has become an integral component of our daily communication. We fundamentally rely on the security of LTE for a variety of applications. The security goals of LTE include, amongst others, mutual authentication, traffic confidentiality, and location privacy. Any attack vector undermining these security aims has far-reaching implications to the use of LTE as a communication medium. In the context of mobile communication, mutual authentication is an important security aim, since it ensures that both communication parties, the user equipment and the network, mutually verify their identities. That is, we're sure we're communicating to the party we think we are, and vice versa. As the wireless medium is accessible for everyone in the vicinity and identifiers can be easily forged, mutual authentication is essential for building trust between communication parties. The telecommunication providers rely on user authentication for accounting, authorization, and the association of data sessions to a legal party. The latter case is of particular importance in prosecution. And in fact, this does, as we'll see, have some significant implications for defense attorneys, in which a possible offender is accused of committing a crime via a mobile internet connection. Additionally, users rely on network authentication for the confidentiality of their communication. One important example for missing network authentication is the second mobile network generation, GSM, Global System for Mobile Communications. By faking the identity of a legitimate network, an attacker can impersonate the network in GSM and eavesdrop on the communication of the victim. And of course, we well know that that's the famous phenomenon that we see in Las Vegas during the hacker conferences, where the number of apparent cell towers jumps by a factor of 10 overnight. And it's like, wait a minute. So they said, in contrast to earlier network generations like GSM, LTE establishes mutual authentication on layer 3 of the network stack using a provably secure authentication and key agreement, has the authentication and key agreement is AKA protocol. Based on this protocol, subsequent encryption ensures the confidentiality of user and control data. They said permanent integrity protection, however, is only permanent integrity protection. That's the key. that we have, on one hand, we have encryption, which gives us privacy, but remember that integrity is the second side of that. We need authentication. We need something, we need to know that nothing has been changed, which is integrity protection. They said permanent integrity protection, however, is only applied to the control data. A recent study has revealed that missing integrity protection of the user plane on layer 2 allows the manipulation of user data in a deterministic way. Specifically, a layer 2 attacker in a man-in-the-middle position between the phone and the network can introduce undetectable bit flips due to malleable encryption and redirect traffic to another destination. While this attack demonstrates the potential consequences of traffic manipulation, it is solely limited to redirecting traffic to another destination. So that was prior work upon which these guys based their next-gen attack. They said, in this work, we introduce a novel cross-layer attack concept that complements the known two-layer vulnerability, that is, the missing integrity protection on the user plane, with exploiting the default IP stack behavior of operating systems on layer 3. And specifically, they target iOS and Android, both which are used in successful attacks. They said, we make use of the reflection mechanism of certain IP packets, and I'll cheat and just say that that's ICMP ping and ICMP destination unreachable packets. They said, exploiting the default behavior on these operating systems, we make use of the reflection mechanism of certain IP packets, which allows us to not only redirect user plane traffic, but also to create an encryption and decryption oracle that enables an adversary to perform a full impersonation of the phone or the network on the user plane, meaning to appear as the user to the network and to appear as the network to the user, thanks to decryption. We call this concept IMP4GT, which is impersonation in 4G networks, pronounced impact. Impact completely breaks the mutual authentication property for the user plane on layer 3, as an attacker can send and receive arbitrary IP packets despite encryption. And I'll finish just by wrapping up this part. This attack, they say, has far-reaching consequences for providers and users. Providers can no longer assume that an IP connection actually originates from the user. Billing mechanisms can be triggered by an adversary, causing the exhaustion of data limits, and any access control or the provider's firewall can be bypassed. A potential impersonation also has consequences for legal prosecution, as an attacker can establish arbitrary IP connections associated with the victim's identity. Okay, so I mentioned briefly, they mentioned this encryption-decryption oracle. That's the key to this. They establish a man-in-the-middle interception using a software-defined radio, which are now widely available. They then enable they are then enabled to probe the encryption by flipping bits, which results in a failure and a retransmission. So it is seen as an over-the-air problem, not an attack, which causes the endpoint to retransmit. They inject ICMP unreachable and ICMP ping packets into the stream in order to get either endpoint to reply. And since we've talked about, especially in the early days of this podcast, a lot about encryption, they explain the encryption and the decryption oracle operation, and it's understandable. They said of the encryption oracle, The goal of an encryption oracle is to learn the key stream of a connection, which later allows us to encrypt and inject arbitrary packets. For encrypting a target plaintext, the oracle injects a known plaintext into the system. The system encrypts the packet by XORing the known plaintext with a valid key stream for transmission, which is returned to the oracle. Okay, so what they just said was, I mean, it's so obvious. They take a known plaintext. I mean, it could be all zeros for all anyone cares, but it probably needs to be, for example, an ICMP ping. But they know what it is. They inject that into the stream. The recipient encrypts it by XORing it with the key stream and returns it. Well, we know how to remove XORing, right? We re-XOR what we got back with the known plaintext, and that gives us the key stream, which is the output of a stream cipher, which the communications uses in order as an XOR pad, essentially, in order to create an encryption, which is solid as long as it's never reused. This is a means of obtaining the key stream from the cipher in a way that then allows the attacker to reuse it. They said now the oracle can extract the valid key stream by XORing the known plaintext on the encrypted packet. Any arbitrary payload can now be encrypted by XORing the target plaintext and the key stream, which has been determined. So basically, that bypasses the problem of this data being encrypted on that layer. They said of the decryption oracle, the goal of a decryption oracle is to decrypt and access the payload of an encrypted packet. To achieve the decryption of a packet, the oracle manipulates the to-be-decrypted ciphertext and sends it to the system. The system decrypts the packet and subsequently sends it back to the oracle. In this way, and similar to encryption, we can receive the plaintext of encrypted packets. So they go into far greater detail in their paper. I've got a link to it in the show notes for anyone who's interested. It's being delivered today, as I mentioned, in San Diego. But they've conclusively demonstrated a fundamental weakness. Not only, we already had it in GSM. We knew it was a problem. We thought, oh, we fixed this problem in 4G LTE, except we didn't. Nor is it fixed in the forthcoming 5G, since neither of these systems provides the needed message integrity protection at the user layer, which is where this exploit happens. It must have been assumed by non-cryptographer designers that the encryption running at the user layer would be sufficient to protect the user's communications. That is to say, they must have assumed that the encryption running at the user's application layer would be sufficient. But it turns out there are available exploits. We know that XOR-based stream ciphers, while highly attractive due to their economy and the ease of implementation, are also highly susceptible to interception attacks that can trivially reveal the key stream if the plaintext can be known. You just XOR what you know the person talked about. And we've encountered and talked about various attacks through the years on this podcast against simple XORing of stream ciphers. These guys clearly state that the only way for this to be fixed is for all of our existing cell system infrastructure hardware to be upgraded at the smartphone and the cell tower level. And we all know that's never going to happen. They are hoping that there might still be time to head off implementation of 5G, which repeats these mistakes, but they acknowledge it's unlikely. So what it means to us is that application level services like iMessage and Signal, WhatsApp for that matter, which provide their own application level encryption and secure management, they're secure against this for their own end-to-end encryption. They don't rely upon the integrity of the underlying channel. But HTTPS is less certain, because there we're relying on, just for standard web browsing, we are relying upon some aspects of the integrity of the underlying network. We're assuming that DNS is giving us the right IP, and that we're actually connecting to the machine at that IP that we think we are, and that that its certificate has not been spoofed. So we're trusting its certificate. We know that certificates can be obtained by presumably by state-level actors on a whim. They still have the problem of getting us to a spoofed server using a spoofed certificate. DNS and IP switching integrity is what we rely on. That's what this system is able to subvert. So this could be the component of a targeted attack by a state-level actor against specific individuals in specific settings. The good news is it's not deployable at scale over the internet. This requires physical man-in-the-middle proximity, and it is a sophisticated attack, so it would only be targeted, and it needs multiple layers in order to redirect web traffic. I'm pretty sure that without a lot more work, the higher level encryption protocols that are providing end-to-end encryption through multiple strong endpoint encryption, in other words, iMessage and Signal and WhatsApp and so forth, those guys, they're probably safe. But this is now a new attack revealed today, and we're going to be using 4G LTE for a long time. Again, most of us had nothing to worry about. The use of strong messaging keeps us safe, but it would subject standard web communications to an attack by a state-level actor who is able to put all the pieces in place, and there are many of them, but they would be able to pull off site spoofing in a way that was undetectable. Well, except by Chrome, actually, because I don't think you can spoof. Well, maybe have to think about whether you could spoof. I don't think you could spoof the serial number on the certificate. So it would still be limited depending upon what sites were being visited. Chrome could only detect it if you were going to Google properties, and then where it knows what the certificate has been pinned for in Google. But still, this suggests that we're unable to completely take the connections we have to our cellular providers as secure by default. So, yeah. Starting today, also in today's news, we have Mozilla's rollout of DOH by default turned on in Firefox. Starting today, any new installations of Firefox will have DOH enabled by default. That's, of course, DNS over HTTPS. Then over the next few weeks, it will be silently enabled for all Firefox users in the United States. They're gonna gradually roll it out so that if there are any showstopper issues that are discovered that haven't already been found, basically it's been an overwhelming success so far. No showstoppers have been identified. In the U.S., over the next few weeks, the rest of Firefox users will be switched over to DOH. The only users who will not receive this update are those who have specifically disabled DOH in Firefox's settings previously. And as we know, we've covered this on a number of podcasts, the move to encrypting DNS by tunneling it over HTTPS has not been welcomed by everyone, by a long shot. The most concerted pushback came from the UK, where, remember, that ISP association went as far as to nominate Mozilla in 2019 as the year's internet villain due to its work on the DOH protocol. And of course, they regretted that nomination and subsequently rescinded it. But the ISPs warned that rolling out DOH would cripple the UK's national firewall system, which ISPs and law enforcement are using to limit access to child abuse websites and copyright infringement domains. After their lobbying efforts were joined by law enforcement and the British government, Mozilla themselves capitulated last summer in July and announced that they would not be enabling DOH for UK users, at least for now. I presume individual UK users can also enable it if they choose, but it's just not going to happen by default. So whether or not ISPs and governments like it, DOH appears to be where the industry is headed. So I think this is going to end up being a transient upheaval, and those who are against it are going to end up losing. It is now, as we last talked about this, supported by all major web browsers. Even if it's not always easy to find the setting, it's in there. And even Microsoft has announced plans to support DOH natively in Windows in the future. So whereas right now, if you're using a browser with DOH DNS resolution on Windows, only your browser is getting the advantage of the encryption and security benefits of DOH. If Microsoft moves it down into the OS and supports it natively, then all browsers, whether they're configured, as long as they're using the OS's DNS resolution, which is the typical default, and all other things, email and everything else on Windows would get DOH. And that suggests that we're probably going to see this go OS wide at some point. So it is still Cloudflare, the default provider. And that of Mozilla's DOH, and that's a decision I wholeheartedly support. Not only has Cloudflare formally asserted that they will not log, nor monitor, nor intercept this use of DNS over HTTPS in any way, but it's Cloudflare who is making that assertion. And there are few companies that I would trust more to actually honor their pledge. So, good. Yeah. And if somebody, for some reason, doesn't want to use Cloudflare, just wants to be contrarian perhaps, Mozilla does offer, Firefox offers the selection of NextDNS, which is also another good group. And so you can choose that if you'd rather not use Cloudflare. So anyway, you'll get it if you haven't deliberately turned it off. I've turned mine on the moment we started talking about it and the moment it appeared in the UI, and my Firefox works just as well as my Chrome does. So I don't see any downside, and I'm not that worried about Cox, my ISP of my cable service, snooping on my web browsing, but they can't do it when I do it under Firefox, and that's going to be the case for everybody by default. Any new installations starting today, and within a few weeks, everybody should have it. Cool. And in another piece of important Firefox news, we've got a new generation Sandbox coming first, interestingly, on Firefox for Linux and Mac, and only a little bit later to Windows. It's the result of a bunch of hard work by a team from UC San Diego, UT Austin, Stanford University, and Mozilla. It brings the next step in protecting users both from malicious and inadvertently exploitable libraries that their web pages may load. There is a paper which the group has published. It's up on GitHub. I've got the link in the show notes. It's titled Retrofitting Fine-Grain Isolation in the Firefox Renderer. And to give our users a sense, our listeners a sense for what they've done, I'll share from the beginning of it. They said, all major browsers today employ coarse-grain privilege separation to limit the impact of vulnerabilities. They run renderers, the portion of the browser that handles untrusted user content from HTML parsing, including JavaScript execution and image decoding and rendering, in separate sandboxed processes. This stops web attackers that manage to compromise the renderer from abusing local OS resources to, for example, install malware. They said, unfortunately, this is no longer enough. Nearly everything we care about today is done through a website. By compromising the renderer, an attacker gets control of the current site and often any other sites the browser has credentials for. With services like Dropbox and Google Drive, privilege separation is insufficient even to protect local files that sync with the cloud. Browser vendors spend a huge amount of engineering effort trying to find renderer vulnerabilities in their own code. Unfortunately, many remain, frequently in the dozens of third-party libraries used by the renderer to decode audio, images, fonts, and other content. For example, an out-of-bounds write in libvorbis was used to exploit Firefox at Pwn2Own 2018. Both Chrome and Firefox were vulnerable to an integer overflow bug in the libvpx video decoding library. Both also rely on the Skia graphics library, which had 4 remote code execution bugs until recently. To appreciate the impact of these vulnerabilities and the difficulty of mitigating them, consider a typical web user, Alice, that uses Gmail to read email in her browser. Suppose an intruder, Trudy, sends Alice an email that contains a link to Trudy's malicious site, hosted on sites.google.com. If Alice clicks on the link, her browser will navigate her to Trudy's site, which can embed a .ogg audio track or .webm video to exploit vulnerabilities in libvorbis and the libvpx and compromise the renderer of Alice's browser. Trudy now has total control of Alice's Gmail account. Trudy can read and send emails as Alice, for example, to respond to password reset requests from other sites Alice belongs to. In most cases, Trudy can also attack cross-site, i.e., she can access any other site that Alice is logged into, for example, Alice's Amazon.com account. Recent versions of Chrome and upcoming versions of Firefox support site isolation, which isolates different sites from each other. For example, star.chrome.com from star.amazon.com to prevent such cross-site attacks. Unfortunately, Trudy might still be able to access drive or pay or cloud.google.com, which because she has access now to gmail.google.com. So she could get drive.google.com, pay.google.com, or cloud.google.com, which manages Alice's files, online payments, and cloud infrastructure. Since the renderer that loads the malicious .ogg and .webm content might still be running in the same process as those origins. Thus, you don't get process isolation. Thus, process isolation doesn't help. They said for many sites, Trudy might not even need to upload malicious content to the trusted victim origin, sites.google.com in our example. Most web applications load content, including images, fonts, and video from different origins. Of the Alexa top 500 websites, for example, over 93% of the sites load at least one such cross-origin resource, and the libraries handling such content are not isolated from the embedding origin, even with site isolation. They conclude, to mitigate these vulnerabilities, we need to harden the renderer itself. To this end, we extend the Firefox renderer to isolate third-party libraries in what they're calling fine-grained sandboxes. Using this, we can prevent a compromised library from gaining control of the current that is, a compromised library from gaining control of the current origin or any other origin in the browser. So, as we've often observed on this podcast, our web browsers have become the largest attack surface that we routinely extend out onto the internet. By their very nature, web browsing is insecure. It's inherently insecure. We're actively soliciting sites we know little about, or even trusted sites that we may trust, but they themselves may have been compromised. Whether an unknown site or a trusted site, they are sending tons of code to our browser, which our browser interprets and asks our browser then to fetch massive third-party libraries and advertisements from all over the internet, running code that we've never seen before in the context of our browser. We bring them all of this stuff in to be processed, rendered, executed, and displayed. I mean, I'm so happy we have these guys and guys like them watching our backs. Lord knows we need it. So this new technology is called RLBox, RLBOX. It will first be deployed in Firefox 74 for Linux, which is set to be released early next month, so a few weeks from now, or in early March. Then the next month, in April, RLBox will ship for Firefox 75 for the Mac. And its development in Firefox for Windows will eventually catch up. So Firefox appears to be leading the industry in this, and as a result of this effort. And I'm sure once the technique has been proven and has matured, I'll be shocked if Chromium doesn't go, sort of basically follow Firefox to this next step and employ these fine-grained sandboxes in order to protect our browser environment from the libraries that they run. Right now, those libraries are running in process. They are not being separately sandboxed from the pages that they load. So that will be a good thing. Also, just this morning, Chrome users running Chrome on Windows, Mac, and Linux were updated to 80.0.3987.122. It's not a big problem. I doubt it would affect anybody. I checked, and that's the Chrome that I had. It doesn't affect Chrome OS, nor iOS or Android. So just the desktop platforms. It was released this morning to address 3 security bugs, including a 0-day vulnerability, which, as its designation as 0-day implies, was being actively exploited in the wild. We don't yet know anything about the attacks, only that it has a CVE tracker, which describes it sort of generically as a type confusion in V8. V8 being, of course, Chrome's JavaScript interpreter compiler. We do know that the use of this bug in attacks was discovered exactly a week ago on February 18th by a member of Google's threat analytics group that keeps watch on the things that Chrome encounters when its users are using it out on the net. This is, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the third 0-day that has been discovered in Chrome in a year. The first one was last March, so it's almost exactly a year ago that the first one was found. The second one was found in November, and the third one last week. So, this is to be expected since Chrome has become the internet's #1 browser. It's now the #1 target. And Leo, I am needing to wet my whistle. Then I'm going to update our listeners about SpinRite, my recent work there, and talk about Apple's Cert surprise.
Yay. And we're going to be at RSA tomorrow. We're going to have a little after party for LastPass at Bourbon and Branch, which is the lovely little speakeasy. We've done this 2 years running now. This will be our 3rd year. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I invite everybody who's in San Francisco for RSA to come by tomorrow night. Starts at 7 p.m. at Bourbon and Branch. But as is appropriate for a party for LastPass, you need a password to get in. It's a speakeasy, and it's not Swordfish. So here's the deal. Email tickets at twit.tv, or you can go to twit.tv/blog and see the blog post there. There's a little form to fill out if you want to come, and they will send you the password so you can come to the party. Would love to see you there. I'll be there. Lisa will be there. I think other members of our staff. And it's always a lot of fun. Great food, great booze, and lots of fun. We had a great time the last 2 years running. So tomorrow, the 26th of February, 2020, 7 p.m., Bourbon and Branch. You need a password to get in. So go to twit.tv/blog. See the blog post, and there's a form there. Our show today, and I promise not to cough on you during the party. I haven't decided if I'm going to wear a mask or not. I don't think so. I don't think there's any need to. No. If I don't shake your hand, if I just wave, that's good. Our show today brought to you by Privacy.com. Talk about hygiene. I love this. I love this so much. Yep. Privacy lets you use the same password on every site. We tell you that over and over again, right? Privacy lets you use a different credit card on every site. You get a brand new virtual Visa or MasterCard number whenever I'm an online site, or just handing over a credit card number. I do this all the time. The other day I did it. My daughter wanted to get a prescription at the pharmacy. They wanted a credit card. I said, no problem. I don't mind handing this out, because the minute they use the credit card number I give them, it's locked to that pharmacy and it can't be used anywhere else, which makes it awesome. You can also put limits on it if you want. You can see the declines. So if somebody declines, in fact, there was a hack. Actually, it was on the privacy.com blog. Somebody was trying brute forcing credit card numbers, which seems like an exercise in futility. But the beauty part is if they get a hit and they say, it works, and they try to make a charge, if it's not at that original merchant, which it wouldn't be, it'll mean it'll be declined. And you can see it in your decline list, and you'll know. And you can pause that credit card. You can delete it. You can start a new one. You have absolute control. Plus, it's very easy to use. They have an iOS and an Android app. You can do it on the web. There's also a Chrome browser extension. Now, I should tell you, it's not a charge card. You're going to link it to a U.S. checking account or a debit card. I just link it right to my checking account. You see everything that happens. There's no issue about mystery stuff going on. You get complete control of your finances. On some cards, I'll set a spending limit. Whenever I set up, like I just set up a subscription to the New Yorker, whenever I do something like that, I look at what the subscription cost is, and I will make that the limit. And you can make it per month, per charge, per month, or per year. So I don't have to worry. I love it for recurring payments and subscriptions. I use it for all of those because the easiest thing to do, if it's hard to figure out how to cancel a subscription, no problem. I just pause the card. It stops. You don't have to worry about free trials, canceling subscriptions. You'll never be billed twice or upgraded without your consent. You have total control. There's a card sharing feature, which I love. I use this with Abby, my daughter, all the time. That's what I did with the drugstore. I will send her the privacy card from my dashboard. This is currently desktop only. There, I'm going to expand it, I'm sure, to the apps. So you don't copy, paste, put screenshots. You don't use text. And your Abby does not need a privacy.com account. She'll have access to the card. You share the card. When you click the share button when viewing a card, enter an email address to share it to. Privacy handles the rest. It's totally secure. It's PCI DSS compliant, of course. Same security standards as your bank. Sensitive information, I love this idea, is secured using not only military-grade encryption, but also split key encryption. Partial parts of the key are held by different employees, so no one person can access the sensitive info on the server because you'd have to get the other person to give you multiple keys to decrypt. Privacy does not, I just want to say, does not sell your data. Your information is safe with them. This is the ideal way to do it. And oh, by the way, if you want total privacy with the merchant, privacy does not verify the address, the name, or the zip code. So you can be John Doe at 123 Main Street, Anytown, USA, 00000, and it'll go through. So the merchant gets no information about you. And privacy protects your privacy. It's in every way what you want. Now, there's a free plan, easy to use. You get 12 cards a month, which is for most people plenty. They can be single-use cards, too. I didn't mention that, as well as locked to a merchant. So you can just say, this is good for one charge and one charge only. But I do the Pro version. So there's two paid versions, Pro and Teams. Pro is $10 a month. You get everything in the free plan plus more accounts, 36 cards a month, more than one a day. And you get 1% cash back. So I use privacy so much, I always get more than $10 in cash back, so I'm always making money. In effect, the Pro account costs me nothing. And getting the cash back is really nice. If you own a small business or you have a team, the Teams option, that's $25 a month. You'll get the cash back. You'll get 60 cards a month. You get a dedicated account manager and transaction limits tailored to your business needs. So pick the plan you want, free, Pro, or Teams. As I said, Pro's paid for me every month. I've made money on Pro, so it's an upfront cost, I guess, but I get the cash back, so it doesn't cost me anything. I love privacy. I've used it for years. Micah uses it too, and it's just for me. I have that extension installed in all my browsers. I have it on Firefox. I have it on my desktop. I have it on my iPad and my iPhone and my Android phone. It's just great. I just feel like I'm in control this time of my charge cards. Go to privacy. Easy enough. Privacy.com/securitynow, privacy.com/securitynow. Sign up for an account. Because you're listening to the show and you use our code, you're automatically going to get $5 to spend on your first purchase. We're kind of paying you to say, I saw it on Security Now. Privacy.com/securitynow. $5 on your first purchase for a limited time only. Free money. Privacy.com/securitynow. You like this, Steve? You like this idea? I like it.
Oh, my goodness,
Many
yes.
other credit cards have offered similar things, but nobody does it like privacy. That makes it so easy. And I don't know. I should look and see. I don't know how many privacy cards I have now. Probably well more than 100. Because anytime I'm buying anything online, that's always the privacy. Even so, if I use it at Amazon, then only Amazon can use it. It's just not available to anybody else. Things like that. It's just great. And boy, for subscriptions, I no longer fear trial offers because I just use a privacy account. Privacy.com/securitynow. We return you to a fully hydrated and caffeinated Steve Gibson.
So, SpinRite. It is where I am finally, happily spending all of my time. I decided that in order to get back with the plan, I needed to go back and reread all of the newsgroup postings from 2013. I began in May of 2013. There were, if I eliminate the postings before and then the postings since the burst of work on 6.1, there were about 6,000 posts for the period that I was actively rolled up and working on 6.1. I've read about 1,200 of the 6,000, so I have about 4,800 remaining, and it has just been the most wonderful thing. The way I tend to operate in the news groups is to sort of journal what I'm doing and what I expect to do next and what I'm going to try, and then the results of that. I'm always producing incremental code for the gang in the news group to experiment with and pound on, and they post their results. So I'm able to get a broad cross section of hardware through time. It ends up being so useful, but never before has there been a 7-year hiatus where I wanted to pick up where I was, but 7 years. So I've completely forgot what I was doing back then. And so this has just been incredibly useful for helping to bring me back up to speed, and just saves a lot of time, because basically I have a detailed log of the whole beginning of this project that is still there, and I'm able to plow back through it. One of the things that and I have been producing some new code, and the gang that's hanging out at the news groups has been running the code. I made a decision 7 years ago, which was the right decision then and is not the right decision today, which was that the AHCI controller, which we all have to run our SATA drives, while the AHCI was a new spec, they had the option to operate in legacy mode. And there are still motherboards where that's the case. And for example, if you even Windows 10, I'm seeing posts out on the net where people are asking, I installed Windows 10 when my motherboard or my system was set to legacy mode. I want to switch it to AHCI mode, but I've tried it and it won't boot. What do I do? Well, and it turns out there are ways to get the drivers installed and then switch over, and Windows 10 knows about it, but because it uses different drivers. 7 years ago, it was much more expedient for me to know that legacy mode was present and to have SpinRite 6.1 use legacy mode. It is less sophisticated than AHCI, but AHCI is like this next generation controller for hard drives that definitely makes sense if you're on a server platform in a multitasking environment, and arguably even on a personal workstation where there's just a lot of stuff going on. But it didn't ever make sense for SpinRite, where you're in basically, you're in DOS, and SpinRite is saturating the use of the drive. The things that AHCI provides, like very sophisticated command queuing, and you're able to chain jobs of things that you want the drive to do in a chain of individual descriptor blocks. And the controller itself, it's basically a little microcontroller. It's able to read the descriptor block, see what it's being asked to do, and then go set the drive up and perform the transfer, reading this block of sectors into this block of memory. And once it's done, it marks the descriptor as completed, and then chains to the next one, and so on. So it's amazingly powerful, but it was just like overkill totally for SpinRite 7 years ago. And it would mean that I was able to get 6.1 to its users. That was the original plan, a lot sooner, before Squirrel, of course, came along. Revisiting this today, it is no longer the case that legacy mode is ubiquitously available. It's obviously still in some places, but lots of the users who are using my PCI enumeration code, which I wrote and first 7 years ago and then updated, it's no longer the case that it is available. And of course, in order to fulfill my promise of having SpinRite run on contemporary systems, that means I have to support AHCI. So that I realized a couple days ago, that decision from then had to be revisited and changed. So essentially, I was also surprised to see how much I got done during that 4-month sprint from May through August of 2013. I have very mature code. I've got the flat real mode stuff all working and well tested. I'm able to allocate 32 megabyte transfer buffers, not 32 kbyte transfer buffers, and transfer 64,000 sectors at a time. So all of the legacy stuff will stay there, because of course it will run on motherboards that are in legacy mode or in older hardware that didn't even have AHCI. So all of that stuff will work with very large transfers, all but bus mastering and operating the way we want. And SpinRite will, the next thing I'm going to do is going to sit down and write AHCI support, add that to the platform that I already have. And then once we get that integrated into SpinRite, we're ready for the next release. I do have bad news on the Mac front. I know that older Macs did have a BIOS compatibility built in, because I had SpinRite running on my MacBook. It was my MacBook Air years ago. It was the reason SpinRite wouldn't run was that the Mac didn't emulate the keyboard hardware. It emulated the keyboard through the BIOS. The Mac uses a USB-based keyboard, and so it provided BIOS emulation, but not hardware emulation. When SpinRite starts up, it switches to reading the keyboard hardware, which is why the keyboard would freeze on people trying to run SpinRite on their Macs. That was easy to fix, and I will fix it so that for Macs that do have that BIOS emulation, SpinRite will run on the Macs with no trouble. The problem is Apple dropped the BIOS emulation in more recent Macs. They are UEFI only, and SpinRite is not going to run on them soon. SpinRite will eventually run on them because Intel has also announced their intention to drop BIOS support for future hardware platforms moving forward. So for now, because FreeDOS doesn't even begin to think about running on top of UEFI, no DOS runs on the EFI platform. That's a complete deal breaker. So it's clear that the only future SpinRite has is if it's also able to run on EFI. So I think I'm going to have to do that before I switch over to the plan for a complete SpinRite rewrite, because EFI is coming, and I'd be nice to be there ahead of that rather than always being behind the curve. So anyway, that's where I am at this point. I've got still a lot of more postings to read and catch up from the past. 6.1 will support AHCI, which was not my plan 7 years ago, but times have changed since then. And I will have something that runs on current PC hardware. I don't know when. I never know when, but that's all I'm doing now. So I'm excited to be back at it and to be working on it. It makes me feel good. It makes everybody feel good. So I'm glad for it.
Nice. Well done.
Something that did not make everyone feel good happened last week. Pause for a sip. The first I learned about it, before it was even in the press, was a letter that I received from Dean Taylor, who's the senior account manager at DigiCert. He said, "Dear Steve, earlier today, Apple announced that Safari will only trust certificates with a validity of 398 days or fewer, that is to say 1 year plus a renewal grace period." He said this policy goes into effect on September 1st of 2020. And it's like, what? So Apple announced last week, Apple announced that Safari will only trust certificates having a validity period from, that is the time from first valid, what do they call it? Valid after, and then not valid after, something like that. They have a very specific way of delineating when the certificate becomes valid and then when it expires. The point is that if the span of those dates is greater than 398, for any certificates with a first valid date of September 1st or later, that is to say, issued after August 31st of 2020, if that span is greater than 398 days, it will not be trusted by any Safari on any Apple device, iOS, Mac, tvOS, iPad OS, anything. So Dean goes on in his letter which is announcing this to me as a DigiCert customer. Certificates issued before that date are not affected and do not need to be replaced or modified. You can continue to issue 2-year certificates until August 1st, 2020. And I think I will. And use them until their expiration. This announcement was made by Apple, he says, on February 19th at the CA/Browser Forum, an industry standards group meeting. While it's generally accepted that short-lived certificates will increase the security of the SSL ecosystem, we've been working with the browsers to time this change in a way that reduces the impact to our customers. While Apple's decision was unilateral, we already have tools in place to make short-lived certificate management easier, and we're working on additional solutions ahead of this change to offer you greater certificate lifecycle automation options. He says, I know this impacts your certificate management practices. That's why I wanted to let you know about the coming change and tell you that we are responding. At DigiCert, we always put, and then blah, blah, blah. He goes into, marketing speak. But he said, here he said something. Before the Apple changes occur, we'll add the ability for you to purchase multi-year certificate subscriptions to smooth planning and reduce the yearly work of buying and installing certificates. These subscriptions will let you reissue, renew, or replace a certificate as frequently as you need to without incurring additional fees. Our intention with offering subscriptions is to save you time and money. And then, he says, hand in hand with your multi-year certificate subscriptions is the ability to automate the entire certificate lifecycle. As the industry moves to shorter certificate lifetimes, automation is the key to keep your business running smoothly. To save time, avoid annual manual updates, and to avoid site downtime, DigiCert Cert Central offers you several ways to automate your SSL certificate needs: robust APIs, Acme integration, and our certificate automation tool. Automation allows you to spend more time doing what you want to do and less time managing certificates. If you have any questions, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so remember like where we've come from. Back when this podcast was just beginning, when honey monkeys were crawling around, and come to think of it, when Leo's favorite password itself was monkey.
Monkey123, yes.
It was possible to obtain an SSL certificate from a certificate authority which would remain valid for 8 to 10 years.
Oh, I wish I had.
From the time of its purchase.
Actually, it would have expired by now.
Yeah. Then, in 2011, the certificate authority, the CAB, the Certificate Authority Browser Forum, CAB Forum, which included all of the browser makers, decided it was, and the certificate authorities decided that was too long due to the, as we know, the enduring flakiness of certificate revocation and the possibility that a rogue certificate might escape and be honored for as many as 10 years.
Yeah, that's too long.
That's
for
too
sure.
long.
And
Yeah.
it's just as a sidebar, we've talked about revocation for a while. There's no notion that it would be it really isn't technically doable, right? It's
It
not
technically is.
It is.
No,
You've always said it could be done, right?
Well, we have the technology to do it. It's called stapling. The idea is that the problem with revocation is that OCSP, the Online Certificate Status Protocol, the OCSP servers have historically been flaky, and they could be DDoSed, for example. So the idea would be the browser gets a certificate, and it looks at it and goes, "Oh, I need to see if this is still valid." It gets a valid certificate. It then makes a query to the OCSP URL that is in the certificate. The certificate says you are free to check the current status of this claimed to be and valid by calendar certificate at this URL. So the browser goes in and queries the OCSP server. The OCSP server is run by the certificate authority that signed the certificate. And it says, yeah, that's valid right now. No revocation.
So the advantage of that is that's instantaneous revocation. The disadvantage is, and nobody, I guess, wanted to assume the cost of this check to OCSP every time you check a cert.
Yes, the temporal cost.
Yeah.
Because even that slows down the presentation of the page.
And everybody wants pages to load instantaneously.
Yes.
So this would be a preferable situation. But nobody's willing to do it. No browser is willing to slow it down that much.
But there's more, Leo. Then, to solve that problem, the really cool innovation known as stapling occurred. With stapling, the web server, which is sending out these certificates to be trusted, it periodically gets a signed OCSP statement and staples it to the certificate.
So does that behind the scenes doesn't slow you down?
Exactly. So the browser receives the certificate and a recently updated affidavit signed by the certificate authority saying, yes, we are reasserting an hour ago that this certificate is still valid.
What would the typical stapling window be?
It can be a few hours. The idea is that as the server begins to see that its current certificate attestation is getting near the end of its life, a few hours,
right,
it starts asking for an update from the certificate authority's OCSP. It updates it, staples it, and then sends the certificate. So
why didn't we do this?
I know. Once upon a time, it wasn't widely available all the web servers now support OCSP stapling. So I know the problem has been solved.
So this would have been preferable, because instead of having a 3-month or a 1-year expiration, you could revoke a certificate within a matter of hours.
Correct.
So
Yes.
far preferable from a security point
Even
of view.
better than a 1-year expiration.
Because now a phony certificate could be as good as a year long, right?
It could, right. And that's why Apple just sort of, I don't know, that's why I think there was probably more going on behind the scenes.
Politics.
Yes, I looked for. There's a this is like this is a big deal. Basically, this cuts maximum certificate life in half. It had been 2 years. Now it's 1 year, and it was not done by consensus. It was done unilaterally by Apple. They've got 17% of the browser share. No webmaster is going to have a certificate that no iOS or Mac user can trust, that brings up warnings that the browser won't show them. So, I mean, Apple was big enough to pull off a unilateral coup, essentially. So, as a consequence, there's a lot of fur flying. I looked for something definitive, and I found it, again, from my favorite certificate supplier. This is from Dean Coughlin, Coclin, the Director of Business Development. And he did a posting that was titled DigiCert's Position on 1-Year Certificates. And it provides some additional background information that I thought our listeners would find interesting. And it's not, it's not hype. He said, at the CA Browser Forum in Bratislava, Slovakia, this week, and that was last week, Apple announced that beginning September 1st, newly issued publicly trusted TLS certificates are valid for no longer than 398 days. This followed a long history of the CAB forum community working to reduce certificate lifetimes and improve security, while balancing the needs of business owners in transitioning to shorter validity certificates. In August 2019, okay, so that was last summer, CAB Forum Ballot SC22 was introduced by Google to reduce TLS certificate validity periods to 1 year. CAs reviewed this proposal with their customers and produced thousands of comments from users, which mostly showed opposition due to the additional work required by IT teams to handle shorter validity periods. The ballot failed in the forum, which meant certificate maximum lifetimes remained at 2 years. At one time, certificates were offered with a maximum validity of 3 years. A few years ago, they were reduced to 2. Fast forward to this week's Apple announcement, which ultimately does what Ballot SC22 failed to do: reduce certificate lifetime to 1 year. He asks rhetorically, why did Apple unilaterally decide to enforce a shorter certificate lifetime? Their spokesperson said it was to protect users, he has in quotes. We know from prior CAB forum discussions that longer certificate lifetimes prove to be challenging in replacing certificates in the case of a major security incident. Apple clearly wants to avoid an ecosystem that cannot quickly respond to major certificate-related threats. But again, Leo, your point is perfect, and that is, okay, so it's still a year. You could do a lot of damage.
It would have been a lot better to put the energy behind OCSP and stapling.
Yes.
In my opinion, your opinion.
Yes.
It's bizarre, to be honest. Google does this too. I mean, they did this with TLS. They do these kind of unilateral.
We're going to throw our weight around.
Right. We're powerful.
Because we can. Yeah. So who knows what politics was going on behind the scenes? My guess is, as I said at the top of the show, I bet not everybody was surprised by Apple's statement. I'll bet you the other browsers, they were kind of hobnobbing and
They may have drawn straws.
Chromium.
Apple might have actually gotten the short straw. Like,
It could be.
like Firefox, Google, Apple all got together. Look, somebody's got to do this. I got 3 straws. Short straw announces. Because any one of them's big enough market share that it forces the hand. So maybe Apple didn't want to do this. I don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah, he said Apple clearly wants to avoid an ecosystem that cannot quickly respond to major security-related threats. Short-lived certificates improve security because they reduce the window of exposure if a TLS certificate is compromised. They also help remediate normal operational churn within organizations by ensuring yearly updates to identity, such as company names, addresses, and active domains. That's kind of a good point.
Fine. But honest, I mean, and Let's Encrypt is 3 months, and if you're using a Let's Encrypt cert, you don't have to worry about this. Problem is, we use wildcard certs, and so I can't use Let's Encrypt. I have to go through a fairly elaborate rigmarole manually. I guess we'll have to automate it. And do you think they'll go shorter than a year? Like this is the first in a series?
I think that this it doesn't really force automation, but like, I mean, there are, you know, I as I told our listeners a couple of weeks ago, I recently decided, okay, I've got all kinds of subdomains, you know, squirrel.grc.com, blog.grc.com. You know, I'll have a spinrite.grc.com. I mean, I'm liking that. I was also liking having EV certs, but they don't allow wildcards.
And those are gone anyway now, right? I mean, those are going away.
And they no longer show you any little extra bling in the browser's URL.
Right. So
it's like, okay.
What's the advantage?
Yes.
So somebody's saying Let's Encrypt does do wildcards. See, maybe we should just go to Let's Encrypt because that's free.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just go to Let's Encrypt. We just, unfortunately, bought 2 years for both twit.tv, you know, asterisk.twit.tv and star.techguylabs.com. But in a couple of years, maybe we'll just all go to Let's Encrypt.
Well, so I think we're going to see automation. We heard them say, you know, because I was thinking, wow, you know, not only does it double the work on the issuer side, but it doubles the work. Double the work on the user side. It doubles the work on the issuer side if they're going to have to re-verify this twice as often. And then I realized, that's this idea of having a subscription. The idea is you could, I mean, that gives them some lock-in, which they like. You're subscribing for a longer period of time. I'm sure you get a better rate per year for the more years you subscribe. Then on some sort of schedule, they will re-verify your identity. But as long as you have a subscription, then you're able to reissue your own certificates. And frankly, that's the way DigiCert already works. When I reissued my own hybrid non-EV star.grc.com, which is what I did, and you know, www.grc.com and grc.com. When I reissued that, I did it myself in the middle of the night because DigiCert already has the automation where they know how old their certification of me is, and they periodically call up and say, hey, just want to make sure you're still answering the phone and you haven't moved and blah blah. So yeah, it's still me. Sometimes they'll send me a file that I have to stick on the root of GRC to reprove my ownership of the domain.
Yeah, we have to do that kind of thing. Yeah, in fact, we're about to do that. We've got the CSR and the whole thing. We got to.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Why not use Let's Encrypt? Why shouldn't we all? I mean, is there a? It's free, right? You and I pay a lot of money for these things.
I still sort of think that so the problem is there is massive fraudulent use of Let's Encrypt. Every possible misspelling of PayPal that you can imagine has a certificate now from Let's Encrypt.
Right.
And I think that browsers, you know, they used to show us what was secure and what wasn't. Then they went away from that, where we're assuming security. They used to show us what was EV and what wasn't, and then they went away from that. I'm betting someday they're going to show us whether the certificate was issued without verification.
Automated or not, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because what you and I are getting from wherever you're getting yours, I'm getting mine from DigiCert.
We were DigiCert, and then Russell said, it's about half as expensive at GoDaddy. And as much as I hate GoDaddy, it's still $800 for 2 years. So, it would have been more. So what Let's Encrypt is, the only thing they can issue are DV certs, domain validation. Right. I'm using, and you're using, OV certs, organization validation. Yeah, that's right.
Which, and so I'm just kind of thinking, at some point, as automation happens, as anybody anywhere can get a domain that is a spoof domain that's PayPal misspelled somehow, and now have a security certificate for it. No serious certificate authority worth their salt would issue a certificate for from a domain clearly intended to spoof a valid, well-known domain like PayPal. So that's sort of the last vestige of integrity. Was there a human in the loop at the certificate authority who said, yes, you guys are real? And at the moment, that isn't shown. But I have a sense in the future it'll be a means of giving the user some additional sense, because once the world goes HTTPS, even the malware all is now HTTPS, because they're all using Let's Encrypt.
Yeah. So DigiCert is using Acme. Acme is that automation protocol. That's what DigiCert. LE uses as well, right? They use Acme.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Though they're backing it up with, they're able to issue organization verification.
Right.
Certs,
that's what I want.
Because I really think you do.
Yeah. That's only $800 a 2-year cert, so it's not awful.
Yeah, and so I don't think that they're certainly not going to charge $800 for a 1-year cert. They'll probably
tell me 2 1-year certs.
Well, or say, hey, are you willing to commit to stay with us for 10 years? If so, we'll give you a discount just like domain names are. We'll give you a discount if you buy a longer period of time, and during that time you'll be able to reissue, and in fact you'll have to reissue at least every year, but you'll be able to reissue anytime you want to within the validity period of that subscription. So basically, we're changing the way we interact with certificate authorities, and once that's happened, Leo, as you forecast, I think we'll be dropping to even more often than once a year, because we'll have the mechanisms in place. But again, we solved the problem with stapling. It's a perfect solution. And it's like, we're not going to do that.
If I were DigiCert, I'd be pissed, because it does feel like maybe they're going to be putting them out of business. Like the goal is, well, maybe not, but I mean, honestly, a lot more business will go to pressure. Let's Encrypt.
Yes. Although, it turns out these certificate authorities are generating certificates for all kinds of other things. Enterprises have really expansive needs for authenticating endpoints and things that, remember, you can't get a certificate from a CA for a non-public domain. Right. So enterprises have all kinds of other needs for certificates for authenticating, their own internal VPNs, right, all their internal connections, and apps are often signed with certificates that are only recognized by the enterprise. So there's all kinds of other uses too. But anyway,
what a surprise.
Apple just said,
did this. Yeah.
We're just gonna force it. Yeah. Even though just 6 months ago a consensus ballot failed.
I got this new conspiracy theory. They got together. They drew straws.
Spin the bottle.
Apple got the short straw. You're gonna announce it. That we all want to do it. You're gonna announce it. And then it'll be forced. The issue is forced. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
I'm going to get back to work on SpinRite.
Yay! Details at grc.com. That's where you'll find not only SpinRite, latest version. If you buy a version today, by the way, you'll get the new version when it comes out. So no worry about upgrading.
Actually, if you buy today, you get all of the pre-release versions before it comes out.
Oh,
because you'll be able to use your serial number or transaction code in order to get access, pre-release access.
Nice.
So there's a little spiff there, too.
Yeah, and I bet there's a few people using it who have not yet paid for it. So here's an opportunity to make yourself right with the world and get some nice benefits. grc.com. Steve has lots of free stuff, too, including Shields Up, his famous, world-famous routing checker. If you listen to the show, you might want to get it there. He has 16 kilobit versions. That's the smallest file size. And English language human written transcriptions, which is great if you like to read along while you listen. That's all at grc.com. We have the show as well, 64 kilobit audio, 100 whatever video, big. And you can get that at twit.tv/SN. It's also on YouTube. Best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast application. You can get it that way. Just search for Security Now, or better yet, search for Twit. Subscribe to all the shows you want, and then they'll automatically be downloaded, and you'll never be without stuff to listen to on your device. We record the show every Tuesday, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern, 21:30 UTC. If you want to stop by and watch, you can. Or listen, audio and video streaming at twit.tv/live. If you're doing that, join the chat room at irc.twit.tv. We had a little outage yesterday. The chat room went out, the wiki went out, and most importantly, from our point of view, the RSS feeds went out. Our server company, Contigix, had a switch failure. They rebooted, failed again. It took them about a couple hours, 5 hours, something to get back. So if you were a little slow getting the downloads yesterday, or maybe you couldn't get in the chat, that's why. But it's all okay now. If you're going to be at RSA, we will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to email tickets at twit.tv or go to twit.tv/blog to get the secret password for this fabulous LastPass party. Steve is on the Twitter at SGGRC. That's a good place to leave questions for him. He takes DMs from anybody. And he tweets there regularly, too.
And speaking of LastPass, I have confirmed my participation in the next event with you, Leo.
This fall, we're going to do an event in San Francisco, and everybody will be invited to that, and we'll give you details to follow. Yeah, thank you, Steve. I can't wait. You and Lori coming up. Dinner's on me.
Yep.
We're going to have a lot of fun.
We will indeed.
Yeah, there's good restaurants in San Francisco, I hear. I hear that.
Is it actually going to be in the city? All I knew was the Bay Area.
I think so. I don't know. You know what? Ask Laura. She's in charge. I should never talk out of school because I'm the last person who knows. Thank you, Steve Gibson. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Security Now.
Righto.
Episode 1 of Hands on Android is out. It's digital well-being tools, how to use these tools to get back reconnected to your real life and out of the smartphone life. When I first heard of these features, I was a little iffy. I wasn't sure I really needed them, but what I realized is by using them, it connects me to the people that are around me a little bit deeper. I don't always have this slab in front of my face recording the world that's around me. I can reconnect with everybody, and that's really important to me. Hopefully it's important to you, and I'll show you how I do it. twit.tv/HOA to subscribe to Hands on Android. We'll see you there.
Security.